Hello, everybody. Manish. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for TestMu AI. I'm joined today by the Chief Executive Officer of QualityAI, Andrew Duncan. Andrew has been in the industry for more than 30 years. He was the CEO of Infosys Consulting before coming on board to lead QualityAI, which used to be called Qualitas, as many of you would know. Andrew, thank you for taking the time to join us for this conference. Welcome.
Manish, it's a pleasure to be here, my friend. And I see this conference grow year on year. It's becoming truly impressive. So congratulations to you and the team. But yeah, an honor to be here this morning.
Thank you. And folks, just like the last sessions we've been doing, feel free to join into the conversation on LinkedIn and X. Use the hashtag TestMuConf to join in. Share your opinions, insights, and even ask your questions on the topic that we're going to be going through today. It's an interesting one. Needless to say, AI is everywhere. You would have seen that in many of the sessions we've been having over the last 2 days. But we're now moving from can you build it to can you trust it, right? It's moved from skunk works projects that people have been doing, tinkering with AI, to now real production. And I'm looking forward to this conversation with Andrew where we'll learn real life examples of how these things are being done by enterprise customers globally. With that, Andrew, let me jump straight into the topics. I'll try to structure it more in terms of asking you about AI, looking at governance, looking at trust, and also what should the practitioners who are on this call, what they should be doing in this new can you build it to can you trust it model. So let's talk about AI, Andrew. It's everywhere. What are you seeing from customers in terms of adoption and moving AI projects to production?
It's a really good upfront leading question, Manish, and it relates to what I see as essentially there are the two core eras of AI thus far. We had the first era, which is still ongoing to a degree, which is all around intelligence. It was the proof of concepts, the skunk works, as you mentioned, the pilots. Sort of what is the art of the possible? How do we do that? How do we prove it out? What is needed to do it? So a lot of that has been going, and we've achieved some amazing things across the industry. And you can look back over the last probably 18, 24 months, and you can see evidence of that, true evidence of it. But the second era of AI is all about trust. And trust is what it provides essentially the foundation for confidence. And confidence is the thing you absolutely need in order to operationalize AI. What do I mean by operationalizing AI? Actually putting it into your business and then the real test, scaling it or having the confidence to scale it. I think many have engaged obviously with the first era, but are really struggling with this second era in terms of asking themselves the question, how can we trust it so we can roll it out at scale? It's a huge question. And it's causing a degree, I think, of FOMO across multiple industries. We've heard all the rhetoric of we're doing this and we've got this agentic that and this amazing framework over here and we've operationalized and everything. And yeah, everybody's talking about it. But we look at it and from our side, we see an awful lot of clients and prospects that they may not be quite as far along as maybe the rhetoric or the narrative would suggest. And in reality, I mean, where there's a thing called a trust gap between sort of where your trust is inherently of an AI solution and where the capabilities are of the AI solution. And the gap is we talk about as the trust gap. And this gap is fundamentally expanding. It's not contracting yet because the capabilities of AI are still accelerating away from our ability to actually consume them. And in fact, I was speaking to someone yesterday who made a comment that he feels that there is more AI capability in their organization that they could possibly use to realize value sort of over the next 3 to 4 years. And that is a sign that sort of the operationalization hasn't necessarily kicked in. But we always ask sort of some fundamental questions. If you've got this sort of operational AI environment, what's really materially changed because of AI in your business? Have revenues gone up? Has costs reduced? Have cycle times reduced? Has the customer experience accelerated or improved? Is your overall operational performance improved due to AI? Point at the AI that is preceding these benefits. And that's where you can start seeing some of the cracks in this veneer of, yeah, we got it, we're all good, it's all up. It isn't quite that smooth. 3 other things we look at is one around adoption. Are employees and customers actually using your solutions? And that you'll hear a lot about sort of customers are beginning to use it, but are employees using those solutions? Are they driving this adoption? Another one is around quality, obviously our bag, which is around are your solutions consistently producing the intended outcome? And I'm not talking technical outcome, I'm talking business outcome here. Are they delivering the what you expected? And then the last one, which is really key, is around trust. Are people confident enough to act on what it actually produces, and are they prepared to act on what it produces at scale, as in turn the volume up on what you've just deployed? And the answer there is normally, and we'll get into this a bit later, I'm sure, but the answer is not quite as firm a yes as you'd believe from the original narrative. But another line we use a lot is that you can't confuse a successful pilot with a solution that's ready for production and scale, period. And I think people are beginning to realize that there is a big gap between what we've done in the first era and what was required for the second era.
Yeah, and I think you're right. This movement from pilot to production, it's more than trust. It's also about the risk. Things are changing, right? Every day there's a new model or there's an improvement that's coming in. So how do you iteratively do this is a question mark. But then the fundamental thing which I'm seeing, Andrew, when I'm talking to customers is the risk. And the assurance layer or the quality teams thing was always, how do you mitigate risk? So when you're deploying AI into production, how do you take care of this risk? Or how do you think what's an acceptable risk to deploy AI, which is non-deterministic in many ways, into production of business processes?
Another, I mean, bang on question. And it's so what is acceptable risk? Parking aside, or the risk aside for a minute, what evidence do you need to see to be confident that whatever risk you think may be out there has been mitigated by this solution or by the assurance you've provided around the solution? So what evidence needs to be produced to deliver trust and confidence so the solution can be deployed and this is the key, and remain deployed? This is not a one-off sort of assurance exercise anymore. This is, as you said yourself, Manish, the AI is moving around, it's adaptable, it's flexible. And just because it works today does not necessarily mean it's working as you want it to tomorrow. So we're moving into this sort of continuous world. But it fundamentally, at the end of the day, finding evidence that gives you the faith and the confidence that, yes, you're mitigating risk gives you some indication of what acceptable risk is, because we're now talking in guardrails. We're talking in gray rather than just binary outcomes of does it work, does it not work. The other key is whatever you think your acceptable risk is, it's got to be agreed across a far broader stakeholder group than we're used to. And there's big reasons for that. This is no longer an IT issue. We've got business managers who are vibe coding apps, seems to be sort of 2 or 3 days a week, and off what set of requirements, off what set of parameters, what are these apps going to do? Are they secure? Are they responsible? Are they non-biased? All these sort of multiple questions. So you've got to, as we look at the expanded development landscape, we have to understand what stakeholders are out there, and are they all in unison and agreeing what risk is acceptable or not. And it's been a very enlightening 12 or 18 months or so as we get into those discussions, because we're beginning to ask questions of business stakeholders who've never been asked things like that before. And they're trying to come in and they definitely have their opinion around it. Another one, which is, I mean, very sort of question of the du jour, is sort of where and when should a human be in the loop, and what triggers this? That gives you a very, very good example, or a very good indicator of what is acceptable risk and what isn't. There's a question layer down, which I think is a really interesting question, and it provides a lot of organizations pause before they answer it. But it's, if this goes wrong today or tomorrow or starts drifting, who's accountable? Who's next on the line? Whose job is at risk? And suddenly you see everybody sort of engaging in these ethereal discussions about acceptable risk and thinking, hang on a minute, this could actually affect my job. And so you're getting into this world where if people don't have the confidence that it's going to work exactly as expected, they may not be so keen to not only put it in production but scaling it. And again, that is the difference between first era, second era AI. And then you got the last spin on it, acceptable risk. For those in regulated industries, a lot of those acceptable risks are defined for us, but actually having an awareness of where those risk obligations are and knowing how you stack up your risk against them is vital to basically maintaining sort of a broader regulatory confidence, not just within your internal stakeholder group, but obviously with the external as well.
I sort of sense that. Sorry.
It was a long answer to a simple question, but it's complicated.
It is complicated, and I see an inherent paradox in what you just unpacked, Andrew. In everybody's opinion, AI is supposed to speed things up, whether it is release, whether it is business process, engagement with customers, almost everything. But with this new layer of governance, as you talked about, having multiple stakeholders sign off and take on the acceptable risk, wouldn't things slow down in organizations?
Yeah, it's actually so in order to get to a point where a solution is scalable and you can benefit from the efficiencies that AI-driven solution can provide, you've got to invest up front in a fair amount of rigor and governance to make sure that it is fit for purpose, that it is trustworthy, that you are confident in its ability to actually to do the things that it is prescribed to do, and it's on multiple fronts. Is it working technically? Okay, yeah, fine. Is it working from a business standpoint? Not so easy to understand, to necessarily articulate. And what do you need to see to be confident it's going to stay operating as you'd expect? And unfortunately, that requires additional rigor. It requires additional governance to get to that point where you feel assured that, yes, I'm confident the solution is going to work, and I'm confident enough where I'm going to allow it to scale through my organization. It's kind of like I use the airline analogy. So you're sitting as a CEO of an airline, and you want to increase the schedule of flights or the airline or the sort of capacity across your network. Do you do that by investing more in maintenance crews and airframe crews and such to make sure that it still remains safe, and then dial up the volume and bring all that additional capacity to your network? Or do you go, you know what, I'm going to add more flights and I'm going to keep the sort of the maintenance where it is? I'm not sure about you, but I wouldn't be flying that airline very long. So, and AI is similar. You have to make that investment up front to really liberate sort of the benefits downstream. And that's really what I'm alluding to in those sort of comments.
I got it. And I think if I give my perspective, I feel this might be a temporary phase. And I draw the analogy from cloud. So if I go back 15, 20 years, when applications were moving from in-house data centers or servers to the cloud, the same thing happened. There was governance of, where is data going to flow? What's the security? Who's going to take ownership? But cut to today, people don't talk about those things anymore because it's become very standardized. I feel that in 1 or 2 years, the same thing will happen with all of these AI deployments as well, where, it's an acceptable norm that AI is in business process and everybody's going to go along with the show.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think I think there's a big presumption today that we're there. And as I said earlier on, we're not. We're sort of between first and second era. And the reason we're not there is because we don't have that confidence yet. You look at your example, Manish, of the cloud. I mean, it took a few years for people to become comfortable with whether it's full virtual, sort of hybrid, whatever, private. But it's to get their heads around what the cloud is, as opposed to something that a whole bunch of IT guys made up in a back room a couple of decades ago. It's now core to a business, and it's absolutely something a board looks at for a whole variety of different reasons, not only cost but risk, privacy, responsibility. There's a whole bunch of different aspects, but the broader stakeholder group has become comfortable and confident with what is essentially cloud technologies. They're nowhere near that level of confidence yet with AI. They've been playing around with it and testing it and getting comfortable with it, but are we broadly comfortable with rolling AI solutions out across a mission critical infrastructure as a business? My hypothesis, and I posture it very strongly indeed, is probably not so much, not yet.
Yeah, and I think there's this whole ship and learn concept also going on that, okay, let us try out a few things, let's see what works, and then scale it out. And I'm sure in your role, talking to so many customers across the globe, people are making mistakes and learning from it. So what are the most common mistakes that you've seen?
Yeah, it goes back to, I mean, the comment that just a successful pilot doesn't necessarily indicate a solution ready for operation and scale. But that aside, I think one of the big ones we've seen is that people don't understand that this is not a one-off event. It's not a single gate you've got to get through. It's not like the old days where you just sort of, you put it through a battery of tests, sort of user testing, system testing, link test, whatever those may be. And once it's got through that test, you push the sort of basically convert it to production, and you sort of have all fingers and toes across, quite justifiably normally, that nothing happens. And if it does happen, it's fine. We'll just issue a patch and we'll put that back in production and it will be fine. But AI solutions are not like the old solutions. They're not just purely sort of manifestations of technology. There's data involved, there's drift involved, there's adaptation involved, and you've got essentially non-human agents now taking decisions about or influence about where a business is going to do or what a policy may or may not do. So it's not just about a binary 1-0 anymore that a system that we used to roll out in the old days would do. This is about a whole plethora of different angles, and all those angles are not static. Most of them are dynamic. So you've got to keep essentially engaged in this continuous testing or continuous assurance of AI solutions. But a big mistake is that people think they can just test their little AI solution in isolation. Absolutely cannot do that. It's got to be done across an end-to-end context. And even more importantly, because you've got all these dynamic elements that you're playing with, be it data, technology, the business itself, that are changing context, which will therefore change the behavior of whatever it is solution is you've rolled out. So we see the number one mistake I think people or enterprises make is not understanding that if you put an AI solution out there, not only is there a continuous requirement to provide assurance, but it's also got to be done in an end-to-end context so that you understand all the other components and what they're doing, because they may be AI-based as well and moving around themselves. So you have to look at things in aggregate and ask the question, is it doing what I expected to do? And the other key, and this is it's probably the second most important mistake, this isn't someone saying, yeah, it's working, trust me, it's all good. That's no longer sufficient. We have to see evidence on a almost a daily basis of, yes, those agents or that framework or that solution is doing what we expect it to do from a business standpoint, from a technology standpoint, and within guardrails that we're comfortable with. And a huge part of what we do in Quality AI, and I mean, there's one of them I've been looking at it this morning, is essentially we create these agent observability frameworks and dashboards, and all it's doing is basically continuously testing, running a sort of the same questions against an agent, and the one I've shown you is really just asking sort of, is it doing what we expect to do in an agile manner? Is it scope correct? Is it still addressing the right business guidelines? Is it adjusting within the guidelines? Is it taking action? Are those actions correct? Is the data integrity still meant? All these fundamental questions, and there's a load of them, but by definition, that's best served by AI helping you to answer them. But we track and essentially measure a trust score in each and every agent, and it's very quick, but it has to be done continuously. And because of all the sort of what an AI solution can do in terms of drifting and moving around. So two biggest mistakes. One is not understanding that there's a continuous end-to-end test that's necessary now. And the other one is you have to produce evidence, not hearsay, that it's behaving as expected. And evidence, I'm sorry, normally ends up in some sort of graphic or presentation or slide or dashboard. But people need to see evidence now that it's working, and it's working within the parameters you were comfortable with.
Interesting. And you've used this word drift and also production a couple of times in this and the previous answers. But if I look at traditional approach of, trying to build a system and create a business case for it, that sort of is out of the window now, right? Because you are monitoring a live AI system which is going to drift. So yeah. How should an enterprise look at creating a business case? A lot of the people who are in the audience are definitely doing pilots, but to move to production, they'll need to put together a business case. How do you convince the business that, look, there will be drifts, there will be lots of things that I'll have to look at on a production system? What should
I'll
QA teams
give
do?
you, I'll give you an example. So, I mean, I like a glass of wine when I go to a restaurant, whatever. And let's say that you go into a restaurant and that restaurant has deployed an agent that is pouring wine for you. And so they come up to your table or come up to you in the restaurant and says, Mr. Duncan, would you like a glass of red? And you go, yep, that's lovely. And their measure is a 125 millimeter. That's their basics. And so the agent is basically set up and coded to basically provide a measure of wine to guests and to keep them happy. So it basically asks me, do I want the glass of wine? It pours the glass of wine. And instead of a 125, it gives me a 130. And I'm looking at it, I know what a 125, I'm going, you know what, that makes me feel good. I've got a lovely glass of wine and I'm feeling good. And the agent's looking at the response going, I gave the glass of wine, tick. Mr. Duncan's happy, tick, yep, job done, sort of move on to the next task. So I have my 125 and I'm feeling exuberant. So I then ask for another glass of wine. And the agent comes back and says, right, so yes, Mr. Duncan needs his glass of wine. And if I give him a bit more, then he's happy. And those are my two requirements of sort of that make me do my job. So this time, instead of a 130, maybe it's a 140. And I get a bigger smile. And the agent goes, wow, this is great. Mr. Duncan, maybe it's because he's drinking too much wine, but probably is because I've given him a bit more than he expected. And therefore, I've done my job. And so on and so forth. Well, before long, after if you, not just me, but other customers getting the same treatment, there may be bottles of wine which are no longer accounted for in the restaurant. They've just evaporated because the agent has been overpouring by 10, 20, 30 milliliters, and you don't need to do too much of that before you're down a bottle of wine. That is pure loss. And it's okay. It's a hypothetical example, but that's what I'm talking about when I say drift. You deploy an agent which is designed to pour a 125 and keep me happy. And at the end of the day, he may end up pouring 250s, and I'm very happy, but the restaurant's out of business because it's got a whole bunch of wine that it hasn't recovered. It's a very sort of a nuanced business case, but that's what I'm talking about. So if you're not careful, you could actually end up down a bottle of wine in that scenario. But we need to make sure that, I mean, these solutions not only are working, pouring the 125, but they remain working within the guardrails that we're looking for. And you know what? The 5 milliliters here and there, so he gets a 130 versus a 120, that's maybe fine. That's acceptable risk, as we spoke about right at the start. But a 250 is absolutely not up for grabs. And so we need to define sort of what's tolerable, and then we need to measure it in order to and see evidence of the output. To make sure that we can trust it. And so we see a dashboard or a report which says, yeah, the agent's behaving, it's been pouring somewhere between 125 and 130, and it's done that 100 times yesterday, and did it 100 times the day before. And you go, right, yeah, that agent's pretty much doing what we wanted to do. It's not exact, but it's within guardrails. So we are confident it's doing what we asked it to do, and we think it's safe because it's staying within those guardrails. It's not moving around on us. That ultimately is essentially a very strong business case for basically monitoring something post go live. Yeah, so drift is real. It's not. I know the media and a lot of glamour artists have turned it into this very exciting thing, but it isn't. In reality, in business applications, drift may be fairly dull, but the implications of drift can be very, very dramatic and very real from a financial standpoint.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind the wine agent pouring me extra. But what I would really love is the banking agent to give me some extra interest, just a couple of cents every week. I'm happy.
I'm totally with you, my brother.
I think one of the things which I'm, hearing from customers and, testing professionals, Andrew, is this whole new concept of loop engineering. Quality being embedded in literally every part of the life cycle, which philosophically has always been there for software engineering. Right from requirements to production, and now you're talking about monitoring in production as well. So how is this looking in practice when you're meeting with customers? What has been your and your team's recommendation for them?
Yeah, there's two parts of it, Manish. There's one part, and this relates to something I got asked quite a lot. Sort of, you're a quality business. Sort of, you're going to be out of business soon because AI is going to basically run all that. And actually, it's totally the opposite. It's what we're seeing in the market is actually the AI is creating this huge wave of output or sort of development that is basically coming at us like a tsunami. But unfortunately, the testing and assurance organizations and processes that have to ensure that all this stuff works and is going to behave and stay behaving as we expect is nowhere near equipped to deal with the demand that's being placed on us by development. So we're still seeing this huge uptick of demand for traditional testing and assurance services, which is being created by essentially AI-driven development. And so that's one angle. And so counterintuitively, when we go into clients saying, look, you're going to need more people because we will bring AI to the legacy SDLC process set, and we will, where we can, bring efficiencies and give you the ability to do more with the same. We're not big believers in more with less because we think there's just more and more that has to be done nowadays. But that's part of it. So it's basically educating clients that this isn't just you're going to take 30% of your testing costs out. It's actually quite the contrary. You've got to deal with a far greater demand from development. So you need probably more people, and you need a lot more automation, which is introducing AI into the SDLC to a degree. And so that part of it. But the other part is actually educating, and clients are beginning to get this, that AI solutions do not lend themselves to SDLC type thinking. Testing and assurance is not something you just punt into the long grass and wait until you get there in your waterfall of over a couple of years away, or whatever it may be, depending on the size of the engagement or the transformation. It's something that you have to think about right at the start. So if you are looking to drive or implement an AI-based transformation, what is it going to do? How are you going to know it's working? What are the signs that yes, it's successful? It's not just a system's being deployed like the old days. This is actually, is it doing what you thought it was going to do for you? And is it doing that within the parameters or guardrails you're comfortable with? And so it is a very, very different mentality. And then you put on top of that AI solutions are a lot more fluid, and they're a lot more adaptable than the solutions of old. And so testing is now something which has to be done right at the beginning, or thought about right at the beginning of the development life cycle, in terms of sort of what do we need to test? How do we test? What evidence do we need to show that it's behaving, or it's trustworthy, or it's passed that set of tests to allow us to establish confidence that downstream will allow us to implement and roll out. But also, how do we maintain that confidence? What do I keep needing to see to make sure that I know that part of the transformation is doing exactly what I thought it would do? Very, very different thinking. So there are two big parts of our recommendation to clients, is that AI is making assurance a strategic capability for a business. And it's no longer just you're using AI. It's a technology. It's fine. It's a business decision, and it's a business entity, and it's got to be treated as such. And so AI assurance actually needs to be now treated as part of enterprise governance. It's equally as important. And give you some really obtuse examples. I mean, if something goes wrong, it could damage your brand significantly. It could put you at significant risk around privacy laws around the world. It could give you serious responsibility issues. There are numerous sort of bad scenarios that go on from a piece of AI going wrong. And when I say go wrong, the technology may be working fine. But it may be sort of drifting because data's changed, context has changed. And so it looks okay from a technical standpoint, but from a business standpoint, it's really not. So it is AI, and assurance is a strategic capability in terms of looking after the business. It needs to be part of governance, enterprise governance, not just technology governance. And it has to be engineered into systems and solutions right from the beginning of their development. So you understand what to test, how to test it, what you need to look for, what the evidence needs to look like to basically breed that confidence and trust that, yes, you can put this into the real world and you can then scale it.
It's interesting. I just thought about it. What you're saying is a very good argument for a chief quality officer role to be created in almost every organization, right?
Yeah.
While, quality used to sit under engineering, checking code. But now if you're going to assure AI working in every business process, you need a chief quality officer in literally every organization. That's how I see it. Maybe I should
Totally agree with you,
proclaim
Manish.
this.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, all of us are seeing organizations transform to be more AI capable or AI ready, and new roles showing up that didn't exist 5 years ago. And I think that will continue. But I think the quality officer role, not from just a technology focus, but broad quality focus, I think is something that absolutely is in consideration in many organizations today. I mean, and it gets even more so. I mean, we've only touched on solutions, but you've got the security application or the security implications of those, and the whole cyber sort of elements around. I mean, there are some big thinking that still needs to take place in terms of what does a true AI-enabled enterprise look like from an organizational standpoint. To your suggestion.
Yeah, and absolutely. Since at this point in time, we are still fitting AI into existing business processes. I think the whole business process also needs to be reimagined for every organization in the AI era. Just like what happened for e-commerce, once you go online, doesn't mean you operate in the same way. You need to have a new warehouse management, a new supply chain to cater to a new kind of a business model. I think the same thing needs to happen for AI as well.
And it's also, I mean, that example you just stated, I mean, the thing, I remember I was in the thick of it, sort of basically in the turn of the century, and it was the speed at which stuff was happening was blowing our mind. It was, and you're sort of looking at fulfillment centers which were designed for traditional retail, all of a sudden needing to deliver the whole Christmas volume in a week before Christmas, because there's this thing called 24-hour delivery now. So you don't need to wait, or you don't need to be organized and start buying things in October, November. You can wait until the second week of December. And that creates a massive spike of demand in an organization which was never equipped to do that. And we're seeing something similar here with AI. AI is forcing organizations to deal with a lot more data, a lot more automation, and a lot more speed of development. And they're not set up to do that just yet.
Yeah, definitely exciting times. I think there's huge tailwinds for the profession that we're in. It's going to be very, very exciting. I think it was a lot of interesting points that you made, Andrew. I learned a lot. What would be your one advice to the audience who are piloting or doing skunk work AI projects as they move into production? What would be your one advice to take away?
Manish, I'm going to be a bit cheeky and probably give you a quick list of bullets, just a checklist or whatever. But it's something I thought about as I thought about this chat.
That's true. That's true quality style, by the way. Checklist before you do something.
So I think the first one is start with the business problem you're trying to solve, and how do you measure that you've solved it is a very, very big question. Because at the end of the day, we aren't talking technology alone anymore, as we've been discussing. This is a broader problem which also includes the business. So start with the business problem. Where can AI create measurable value in solving or assisting that problem? I think a second one would be defining success and quality expectations and acceptable risk before development begins, and with all stakeholders, not just within a sort of a cadre of technologists or data scientists or whatever, but across the business. Let's understand, what do we need to see to be confident, and what evidence do we need to see to base that confidence on, that this is what we expected it to be. Obviously, I mean, building the right data and engineering foundations goes without saying. Experimenting and prove the concept by all means, but please do not confuse a successful pilot with the readiness for production, as we stated earlier. Another one which people miss a lot is engineering the solution for real world operating environment. It's that end-to-end context. It's understanding that this is one piece of a very big machine, and if that piece goes wrong, lots of other parts in the machine can go wrong. And so looking at it as not only end-to-end, but in a real world environment. Testing and validating across the entire AI ecosystem, not just the model itself or the solution you're deploying. Building obviously the governance and accountability and assurance into the life cycle is key. A couple more, creating confidence before go live through evidence and not assumptions, which is a big change. I mean, I remember years ago, it was sort of that we assumed that, well, it passed that test weeks ago or months ago, and it's probably going to still, you can't do that anymore. You need to see evidence that yes, everything is working, and you can be assured that everything is working before you make go live decisions. Continuous monitoring and assurance of AI after deployment, really, really key. I think bringing employees and other stakeholders with you, and being very clear about how AI is going to be used and where human judgment remains important, and what controls are in place or what triggers are in place to actually bring in that human in the loop, I think it's a really good test of, are you architecting this solution appropriately and properly. And I think the last thing I'd probably touch on is just being able to measure success by reliable AI operating in production and delivering business outcomes. It's not a sort of, we put that out there, it's implemented. It isn't. It's is it producing reliable, consistent business outcomes and those outcomes that you thought you were going to get when you started off this development project?
Sounds like a great checklist. I'm just reminded of the topic. Can you build it and can you trust it? Can you build it reminds me of Bob the Builder. Can you trust it? For sure. If you follow the checklist, if you follow the guidelines of, making sure that the governance is in place, the checks and balances are in place, and the continuous monitoring is in place. I think that's the important thing as I take away from our conversation, Andrew. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences.
No, Manish, you're more than welcome. It's been really enjoyable chatting to you for an odd half hour or so. So thank you for inviting me on.
Thank you. And I hope all of you in the audience, got some interesting insights, especially the checklist for taking your AI projects into production. I think this is the present continuous future. I've always said this. There's huge tailwind for testing and quality professionals. It's extremely, extremely exciting times with whatever is happening, so much code coming out, so much business processes being tweaked, all of these projects getting deployed into production. It is now the role of, as I said, the Chief Quality Officer to take the reins and make sure that everything works as expected. Thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you have, the rest of the sessions for the last day of the TestMu conference. Thank you so much. And thank you, Andrew, for being with us.